Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders here. Welcome to the Bonsai Zone. And this will be the first part of a series where I'm building a street scene. The trees I'm using are Ficus microcarpa, and it's the Tiger Bark variety. I met Connor yesterday and he brought me the seedlings in a big plastic bag, and he had sprayed them previously with Windex, which kills a lot of the bugs and crawling insects on them. And when I brought them home here, I gave them another spray with soap and water just to make sure there's no insects that'll spread to the rest of my trees. So today we'll be taking a closer inspection of all the new little cuttings. When I was watering them and fertilizing them last night, I did notice there was some scale insects on some of the leaves and on the trunks. So you can see a couple of scale insects on this leaf. So I'll have to give each plant a thorough inspection, a scrub down, and again a spray with soap and water, just to make sure there's no scale insects that I'm bringing into the plant room. Some of the trees are also getting a fairly wild looking root system. You can see this root comes up and all around the pot. So to get these trees ready for planting in my Cityscape kind of diorama, I think the first job will be to go through each tree, inspect it, clean it for bugs, and root prune it and repot it. At this stage, I'll be cleaning the trees up, pruning them, root pruning them, repotting them, preparing them for eventually going into the Cityscape diorama. So this will be the pre-prep work, which is really important to get the trees healthy and kind of on the right track to be part of this Cityscape. We'll go back in time to yesterday, and I'll show you the introduction of these trees, unbagging them, and some of the photos that I found online. And the photos are from the city Hanoi in Vietnam, and the city just has all kinds of character in the old part of the city, and there's, you know, naturally ficus trees growing. So yeah, it's a beautiful part of the city, and that kind of inspired me for it will inspire me for my urban landscape. Okay, here they come. There they are. I'll show you some photos of kind of what I'm thinking of doing. I haven't found the photo of, oh, I love that scene, I want to duplicate that, but I think I'll be combining a lot of different elements to create sort of a street scene, a custom street scene. So, you know, maybe I'll find a storefront that I really like and I'll duplicate that. I'll find a sidewalk I really like and duplicate that, maybe one with cobbles, and maybe I'll find an old motorcycle model or something like that that I can put in the scene, and, you know, combine all these little elements together to create a realistic kind of street scene. It should be a lot of fun. I may even add lights so it can be viewed at dusk or at nighttime too. So it'll be a lot of fun. I hope you guys like this project, because I think it'll be many parts to this series. Someone commented that it would be cool to do a post-apocalyptic scene where the trees are starting to take over the city. And that's a pretty good idea. I showed you those photographs of the roots growing over the motorcycles or scooters. That might be something to do in this landscape, is to have kind of population zero, where humans have disappeared off the earth and nature is starting to take over the city once again. That could be really cool to do that. These trees are of the Tiger Bark variety, so they get that cool bark, and I only have one other Tiger Bark Ficus in my collection, and I'll show you what it looks like. Here's a look at my Tiger Bark Ficus. This was the remains of an air layer, so the top of the tree was air layered off, so it was just a stump. Michael in our club gave it to me, and I've been growing it for many, many years and slowly creating a new bonsai. This tree also has a Vietnamese theme to it. It's growing in a 3D printed Vietnam style bonsai pot. This tree is growing over an artificial rock that I made. It was made with cement and a sponge. And if you want to see more on this Tiger Bark Ficus, I'll put a link to the playlist in the description below. I got a large rectangular pot from Chris Hendry, the bonsai guy, last year, and I haven't used it yet, and I thought it might be perfect for this project. So it's in the greenhouse. I'll dig it out and we'll have a look at it. Well, here I am outside and we've got lots of snow still. It's, I think -1 or -2 degrees Celsius out today. So here's the greenhouse. And I'm inside. And way over in the corner there is the pot underneath that thuya tree. So the question is, how do I get to it? I have a lot of trees in the way here. So it's been a really good temperature in here still. You can see some of the trees still have some snow on them. So yeah, it's hovering right around, you know, just below freezing inside this greenhouse, which is good. It's a good place to store trees. They don't get any wind damage or, you know, drying out from the wind. And it's moderately warm. So I'm going to have to move out some trees so I can get to that pot over there. Yeah. All right, well, let's do it. Let's open this door as wide as I can get it here. Like that. And I'll start taking trees out and just set them on the benches out here until I can get at the pot. Oh my goodness. That's a heavy planting. Out the elephants. Out goes the thuja. I'll set that right there. So there's my pot. A nice clay rectangular pot. That should be pretty good. I've also got this mica pot, which could work also. It's quite large. I'll bring both of them in and decide. I usually like putting the hardy trees in the mica pots because they don't crack in winter. So yeah, I tend not to put my tropical trees in mica pots because it's kind of a waste of a good mica pot. Here's a look at the two pots now. The rectangular clay one and the oval shaped mica pot. These clay pots, even though there's nothing in it, if you store them outside and they get wet, they soak water into the clay and then it freezes, it can still crack the pot even though you don't have a tree in it. So if you do store your clay pots outside, they're fine as long as you keep them dry. So you can put them underneath the benches or under a tarp or in the greenhouse or in a shed. It's not the temperature that'll crack them. It's if they get wet and then they freeze. So that's why I keep this one in the greenhouse. I've got the two pots inside now, and each pot has its advantages and disadvantages. So the first advantage of the mica pot is it's light. The clay pot, this one is very thick wall and it's very heavy. So that one is going to be a heavy planting no matter what. It'll be hard to lift, especially when you get soil in here and trees and my cityscape. It's going to be really tough for one person to lift. Whereas this one, it's light. If I add stuff in here, it'll still be a fairly light planting to handle. An advantage of this one, I think, if we do a cityscape, because streets are mostly linear or in straight lines, it would suit itself probably better to, you know, making a row of buildings with trees out front and a roadway in the front here. It would suit the cityscape better. The oval pot is more for a natural look, I guess, because there's no sharp edges. If I did put a cityscape or buildings in here, you know, they'd all have to come against a funny curved edge on the pot. So it would require a lot of building and it would be a little kind of awkward looking, the rounded ends. It would look okay, but I think the rectangular pot is suited better for a cityscape. I'm going to use the rectangular pot. I think it's more suited for the cityscape diorama. So even though it'll be heavier, I think the shape of it is better. So I'll put it up on the turntable and we'll put a few trees in it and see how it looks. I've got the pot on the turntable and I'm going to place some trees in the pot and just kind of get an idea for what scale I want this planting, what size the buildings will be, you know, all the people and motorcycles and cars. and roadways and sidewalks, just to get an overall scale value. I also want to determine the city layout. So if I have my buildings along the back and a roadway and a sidewalk, or if I want them on an angle, so you're looking more down the street, or if I want a winding street, or if I'm looking between two buildings through an alleyway. There's 100 different layouts you could do. So I'll try and do some sketches today to kind of roughly plan the layout of this Penjing or Cityscape diorama. Some nice tall vertical trees. Some multi-trunk trees. Another tall vertical one. These cuttings are fantastic. You know, when you're pruning a tree, you get all these long, straight cuttings and you think, oh, what good are they? But they're perfect for something like this, where you're starting a tree from a cutting and you've already got some nice branch structure, and they look very natural. They're not, as I said, they're not all wired into weird shapes. So yeah, I think it's fantastic to start cuttings. All the trees are of a similar size. There's no really thick trunk ones. There's a few like these that the cuttings are a little slimmer than others, so they could be in the background. And I don't have to use all of them if it's too many or overwhelming. I do want it to look like a cityscape and not a jungle. I think in a planting, it's always nice to have your eye come in, an opening, and then explore around the landscape. So we'll try for that. We need something in the foreground and then something in the background and something interesting for your eye to kind of look through all these nooks and crannies. Here's a look at the trees now. They're all a similar size, but they're all unique, which is good. I was checking on the internet. I was looking for planters, like, raised planters or raised beds that you plant trees in on city streets. And that led me to wall trees. In Hong Kong, they grow, there's ficus trees growing on walls, stone walls, and they're amazing. They're like a city treasure, and they're trying to preserve them, and the city's trying to cut them down, and there's a big controversy. So wall trees, they're really cool. I'll show you some pictures of them. I've also got some pictures that Connor sent me. He had a trip to Taiwan I think it was about 3 years ago, maybe 4. And he took a lot of pictures of some of the street trees. And I think it's Taipei in Taiwan. And they're really awesome and also inspirational. So let's have a look at those photos. And that also gives me a lot of ideas for this planting. In my planting, I definitely want to incorporate trees growing amongst the buildings and the city landscape. The roots going over things like you see them on the tiles, on the stone sidewalks and the cobbles, how the roots grow in between them, alongside buildings, on walls. So, you know, that theme that the jungle is reclaiming the city again is a pretty cool theme. I think we'll go with that kind of a style where we build the city up and then we plant all the ficus trees as if man has disappeared and the trees are taking over the city landscape once again, eventually covering it up back to jungle. In my cityscape here, I find, you know, with dioramas and that less is usually better. So you don't want to show, you know, you don't want to build like 10 buildings across the back because it just becomes a distraction. You want to build 1 or 2 buildings really well, really detailed, and then, you know, it gives the impression, you get the idea that you're in a city. You don't need to show every building in the entire city. So you're kind of focusing in on one spot and really adding lots of detail to that 1 or 2 buildings. So I like the idea of, you know, maybe a roadway coming in at the front and a T intersection or something. So we kind of have an opening, some trees out front here. I got to arrange these better. Turn this one around. There. Put this one back here. So there's kind of our, you know, our backdrop of the city with the street trees. I could have a road going through here, sort of this is the corner of the street here and another corner here. So your eye kind of looks in the street. It's got a cross street and then, you know, buildings behind or something like that. Many years ago, I bought some building sets. They were on sale at a kid's toy store, and they were kind of, I don't know if they're ceramic or what, but little bricks. And the kit had real cement in it, and you cement all these blocks together, and you create buildings. And they were on sale. They were, you know, blowing them out at a really cheap price. So I bought several of these kits thinking maybe someday I'll build that Angkor Wat temple or the Tapram temple. But the bricks were kind of too finished. They didn't look like old stone bricks. And I thought, I could chip them all, but they were just not suitable. But I think they're just perfect for this project. Maybe even the sidewalks or, you know, the concrete planters around the trees or the buildings. And I want all the bricks to actually be able to break apart. And my stone temple planting that I made, that's happened on that. The roots have grown in the crevices and actually broken the temple apart. I'll show you that. I'm down in the basement now. Let's go over and look at the root over temple planting, which is way in here. And you can see here, this root started out as a very skinny root, and somehow it went in between the 2 stones of the temple, and it actually broke the temple apart. And you can see the temple's cracked up here. Yeah, it's actually tearing the temple apart, just like it would do in, you know, a full-size tree with a real temple. So that's what I want in my planting, is that kind of action where as the trees grow, the roots will grow in between the bricks and it'll actually start to break the buildings apart. But the roots will hold them together, so it'll look very realistic or very cool the way it's, you know, nature is destroying man's creation. I think I'm getting closer to nailing down the concept for this planting, getting that cityscape and having the trees take over. I think it's going to be really cool. So that's maybe the hardest part of a new planting, a Penjing, is thinking up the concept. So I think we're getting close. If you have any ideas, leave them in the comments below. If you've got any ideas of what you'd like to see in this cityscape. And yeah, we'll keep working on it. I think it's getting dark out now. I think that'll be it for today's video, and we'll take up this project again tomorrow. So I'm Nigel Saunders. Thanks for watching today in the Bonsai Zone.